A chance encounter. Jonathan Walker was a man who built his empire from nothing. Born into poverty, he clawed his way up the ranks of corporate America, turning a small investment firm into a billion-dollar empire. But despite his wealth and success, there was an emptiness in his heart, one he couldn't explain, even to his beloved wife, Eleanor. One cold autumn evening, as he drove through the city in his sleek black Mercedes, his mind was occupied with business dealings. He barely noticed the drizzle coating the windshield in a fine mist until he was forced to a stop at a red light. That was when he saw her. A small girl huddled beneath a tattered blanket near the entrance of a closed convenience store. She looked no older than 10, her dark skin pale with cold, her hair neatly braided but dusted with grime. In her arms, she clutched a stuffed rabbit, its fur matted and one ear torn. Jonathan's fingers tightened around the steering wheel. He was no stranger to poverty, but seeing a child alone in such a state stirred something deep within him. The light turned green, but he didn't move. Instead, he pulled his car over to the curb. Stepping out, he adjusted his coat against the biting wind and approached her slowly, not wanting to startle her. The girl didn't look up until his shadow fell over her. "Are you okay?" Jonathan asked, crouching down to her level. She flinched slightly but met his gaze with wide, cautious eyes. Her fingers clutched her stuffed rabbit tighter. "I'm fine," she whispered, her voice barely above the wind's hum. Jonathan studied her, noting how she positioned herself protectively, as if bracing for him to scold or chase her away. "Where are your parents?" he asked. The girl hesitated, her lips parting slightly before she pressed them together. Her silence was answer enough. Jonathan sighed, glancing around the empty street. He knew he couldn't just leave her here. His mind raced with questions, solutions, and the complications this situation might bring. But something in her eyes, the quiet endurance, the loneliness, made him take out his phone. "I'm Jonathan Walker," he said gently. "Would you like something warm to eat?" The girl's stomach betrayed her before her lips could form an answer, a loud growl escaping from beneath the blanket. Jonathan smiled softly, nodding toward his car. "Come on, there's a diner just around the corner. We can get something to eat and figure things out all right." She hesitated but nodded. As they walked toward the car, she clutched her stuffed rabbit to her chest. Jonathan opened the passenger door for her, and after another moment of hesitation, she slid inside. Jonathan watched her closely as he started the car. He had no idea what he was getting himself into, but something told him this night was about to change his life in ways he could never have expected. At the diner was warm, filled with the scent of fresh coffee and sizzling bacon. The girl shivered as they entered, but her eyes flickered with curiosity as she took in the bright booths and checkered floors. Jonathan led her to a corner booth, signaling to the waitress for 2 hot chocolates. "You can order anything you like," he told her. She hesitated before looking down at the menu. Jonathan watched as her small fingers traced the words carefully, as if she wasn't used to reading menus. Finally, she spoke. "Pancakes, please." Jonathan nodded. "Good choice." When the waitress returned with their hot chocolates, Jonathan pushed his toward the girl. "What's your name?" he asked. She looked down at her hands. "Maya." "That's a beautiful name," Jonathan said, testing it out. "Maya, do you have a place to stay?" She didn't answer right away, instead stirring her hot chocolate with slow, careful movements. Finally, she whispered, "Not anymore." Jonathan exhaled slowly. He didn't want to push her, but the protective instinct in him flared. This was a little girl, alone in the world. "Would you let me help you?" he asked softly. Maya's eyes flickered with something unreadable, hope, fear, uncertainty. But she didn't say no. And that was enough for Jonathan. An unconventional proposal. Later that night, after dropping Maya off at a safe shelter for the night, Jonathan sat in his office, staring at the city lights through the floor-to-ceiling windows. He couldn't shake the image of her. The way she held herself, The way she spoke so softly yet carried so much weight in her words. He had built everything he had from the ground up, yet here was a child who had nothing, trying so hard to survive. Eleanor entered the room, placing a warm hand on his shoulder. "You're thinking about her, aren't you?" Jonathan turned to his wife, his expression troubled. "I want to help her, Eleanor." Eleanor nodded. "Then let's do it." Jonathan blinked. "You're sure?" Eleanor smiled. "Jonathan, if there's one thing I know about you, it's that you never walk away from something once your heart is set on it." Jonathan took a deep breath. "Then we adopt her." Eleanor's eyes widened slightly, but she didn't look surprised. Instead, a gentle smile spread across her lips. "Then we adopt her," she agreed. That night, as Jonathan lay awake, he couldn't help but feel that for the first time in years, he was making a decision not for business, not for profit, but for something far more important: family. Little did he know, the choice he had made that night would not only change Maya's life, but his own. And 6 years later, she would repay him in a way he never could have imagined. A new home, a new life. The sound of rain tapping against the car windows filled the silence as Jonathan drove Maya to her new home. She sat in the passenger seat, small and quiet, her hands clutching her stuffed rabbit, Mr. Hops tightly against her chest. The city lights flickered against the glass, casting a glow on her dark brown skin, her wide eyes filled with cautious wonder. Jonathan glanced at her, sensing the tension in her small frame. "You don't have to be afraid," he said gently. "Eleanor and we just want to give you a home." Maya's fingers tightened around Mr. Hops. "Homes never last," she whispered. Jonathan's heart clenched. He had seen that look before, the resigned acceptance of someone who had been let down too many times. He wanted to promise her that this home would be different, that she wouldn't have to leave, but he knew words weren't enough. He had to show her. The car turned onto a long, tree-lined driveway leading up to the Walker estate. The mansion was grand but not ostentatious, built of warm brick and glass, surrounded by sprawling gardens, and a cobblestone path leading up to the front doors. Golden lights glowed from the windows, casting a welcoming ambience against the dark sky. Maya's eyes widened, but she said nothing. As they pulled to a stop, Eleanor was already waiting at the front door, wrapped in a soft sweater, her smile warm and inviting. The moment Jonathan stepped out, she hurried over, her gaze falling on Maya. "Hello, sweetheart," she said gently. "I'm Eleanor. It's so wonderful to finally meet you." Maya hesitated before nodding slightly. She didn't let go of Mr. Hops. Jonathan came around the car and placed a reassuring hand on Maya's back. "Come on, let's get you inside." With slow, hesitant steps, Maya followed them through the grand entrance. The warmth of the house hit her instantly, the scent of cinnamon and baked bread, the soft hum of music playing in the background, the flickering glow of the fireplace. Jonathan and Eleanor had prepared everything. A cozy room upstairs had been decorated just for Maya. A soft lavender bedspread, bookshelves filled with colorful titles, a fluffy rug on the floor. A reading nook sat by the window, draped with fairy lights. Maya stood in the doorway, staring at the room in disbelief. "This is for you," Eleanor said softly. Maya's small fingers grazed the bedspread, as if testing to see if it was real. She turned to look at Jonathan, her wide eyes filled with something unreadable. "Just mine?" she asked hesitantly. "Just yours," Jonathan confirmed. She nodded, then whispered, "Thank you." It was small, but it was a start. Brothers and boundaries. The next morning, Maya woke up to the unfamiliar feeling of warmth. The bed was soft beneath her, the air smelled clean, and for the first time in as long as she could remember, she felt safe. But that safety was soon tested. Downstairs, 2 teenage boys, Nathan and Lucas, sat at the breakfast table, both dressed in expensive sweaters and perfectly combed hair. They barely looked up as Maya entered the room, guided by Eleanor. "Good morning," Eleanor said brightly, guiding Maya toward a seat. "Maya, these are Jonathan and my sons, Nathan and Lucas." Nathan, the older of the two at 17, barely spared Maya a glance before turning back to his phone. Lucas, younger by 2 years, regarded her with open curiosity but remained silent. "Hi," Maya said softly. Nathan snorted. "Great. Another stray." "Nathan," Eleanor snapped, her warm demeanor instantly replaced with sharp disapproval. Nathan shrugged. "What? Dad's always bringing home broken things and trying to fix them." Jonathan's jaw tightened. "That's enough." Lucas nudged his brother under the table, shooting him a warning look, but Nathan didn't care. He was already irritated that his father had gone ahead and adopted some random kid without talking to them first. Maya, for her part, said nothing. She had been through worse. Words couldn't hurt her anymore. Instead of reacting, she simply picked up her fork and took a small bite of her eggs. Eleanor, watching the exchange, gently placed a hand on Maya's back. "You don't have to rush, sweetheart. Eat as much as you'd like." Jonathan cleared his throat, his eyes still on his sons. "Nathan, Lucas, I expect you both to show respect. Maya is your sister now." Nathan scoffed but said nothing. Lucas lowered his gaze. Maya remained silent. She knew what Nathan was thinking. This home wouldn't last. Nothing ever did. The first test. Days passed, and Maya settled into the Walker household, though the tension with Nathan and Lucas remained. Eleanor was patient, guiding Maya through daily routines, helping her adjust to school, and reassuring her in quiet moments. Jonathan, though busy, made time for her, teaching her chess in the evenings, taking her on small trips to the bookstore, making sure she knew she was wanted. But Nathan and Lucas, they made it clear she wasn't. At first, it was small things, ignoring her when she spoke, leaving her out of conversations. Then, it became more deliberate. One afternoon, Maya entered the family room to find her favorite book missing from the shelf. She searched everywhere. Then, she heard snickering from the hallway. Stepping out, she found Nathan and Lucas standing at the top of the stairs. Nathan held her book in one hand, a smug grin on his face. "Looking for this?" he asked. Maya's heart pounded. "Give it back." Nathan pretended to think. Or what? Maya clenched her fists. "Please." Nathan smirked, holding the book over the railing. "What if I—" Oops. The book slipped from his fingers. Maya lunged forward, watching in horror as it hit the floor below with a thud, its pages bent at odd angles. Lucas flinched, glancing at Nathan. "Dude." Nathan laughed. "Oops." Maya's stomach twisted, but she didn't cry. She simply walked past them, picking up the book with careful hands. Nathan expected her to get angry, to scream, to tell Jonathan and Eleanor. But Maya just whispered, "I've lost worse," and walked away. Nathan frowned, watching her go. It was the first time he realized. She wasn't as weak as he thought. Jonathan's promise. That night, Jonathan found Maya in the library, carefully smoothing out the pages of her book. He knelt beside her. "What happened?" Maya hesitated before shaking her head. "Nothing." Jonathan sighed. "Nathan and Lucas are being difficult, aren't they?" Maya remained silent. Jonathan placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "They don't understand yet, but I promise you something, Maya." She looked up, searching his face. "This is your home now," he said firmly. "No one can take that away from you. Not even them." Maya swallowed hard. "What if they don't want me here?" Jonathan smiled, ruffling her hair. "That's their problem, not yours." Maya blinked at him, her heart swelling with something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real hope. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe. Maybe, just maybe, this home might last. Strength in silence. A battle of wills. Maya's days in the Walker household were a quiet war. She had learned long ago that fighting back only made things worse, that if she wanted to survive, she had to endure. The things Nathan and Lucas did, the missing school supplies, the snide remarks, the way they accidentally left her out of family plans, were nothing compared to what she had already faced in life. She could survive them. But that didn't mean she wasn't hurt. She spent most of her time with Eleanor and Jonathan. They had become her anchors, the proof that this home was real. Jonathan taught her business concepts, explaining the ins and outs of stocks and investments, while Eleanor made sure she never went to bed without hearing a kind word. But no matter how much warmth they gave her, Nathan and Lucas still made the house feel cold. One afternoon, Maya sat curled in the corner of the library, engrossed in a book, when she heard the muffled voices of Nathan and Lucas outside. "She's trying too hard," Nathan muttered. Lucas sighed. "She's not that bad." "She's a charity case," Nathan snapped. "And Dad treats her like she's something special." There was a pause. "Maybe she is," Lucas admitted under his breath. Nathan scoffed. "Yeah, right." Maya exhaled slowly, pressing her forehead against the book's spine. She had thought maybe, just maybe, Lucas might be different, but she should have known better. A sister's strength. One evening, Jonathan returned home late from a business trip, his suit wrinkled and his eyes weary. Eleanor greeted him with a warm embrace before he turned to Maya, who sat quietly at the kitchen counter with a textbook in front of her. "How was school?" Jonathan asked, setting his briefcase down. Maya gave him a small smile. "Good." Jonathan studied her. "And the boys?" Maya hesitated. "The same." Jonathan sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. He knew his sons well. Nathan was stubborn, and Lucas followed his lead. It was going to take time. And yet Maya never complained. "You're stronger than they realize," Jonathan said softly. "Stronger than most adults I know." Maya's fingers traced the edges of her book. "I have to be." Jonathan knelt down so he was eye level with her. "You don't have to be, not here. Not with us." Maya met his gaze, and for the first time, he saw something flicker in her eyes. Something raw. Something fragile. Maybe she wanted to believe him. Maybe she wasn't ready to yet. A trap is set. The next morning, Maya walked downstairs to find Nathan and Lucas huddled over their phones, whispering. The moment they saw her, Nathan grinned. "Hey, Maya." Maya paused, surprised. Nathan never called her by her name. Lucas smirked. "We were thinking. Maybe we should get to know each other better." Maya's grip on her bag tightened. "Why?" Nathan shrugged. "Because you're family, right?" Maya didn't believe them. But against her better judgment, she nodded. "Great," Nathan said. "Meet us outside after dinner." Maya wasn't stupid. She knew they were planning something. But she had spent her entire life walking into situations where she didn't have a choice. This was no different. The lake incident. That night, after dinner, Maya found Nathan and Lucas waiting for her by the backyard. The Walker estate was massive, with a sprawling garden that led to a private lake. "Come on," Nathan said. "Let's take a walk." Maya hesitated but followed. They walked down the gravel path in silence, the moon casting a silver glow over the water. The lake was still, reflecting the trees in its dark surface. Then, without warning, Nathan shoved her. Maya stumbled forward, barely managing to keep her balance. Lucas flinched. Nathan smirked. "What? It's just a joke." Maya straightened. "No, it's not." Nathan tilted his head. "You're always so quiet. Thought we'd see if you could swim." Maya's stomach clenched. She couldn't. Nathan took a step closer. "Come on, say something. Prove you're not just some weak little." Maya didn't flinch, didn't give him the reaction he wanted. Instead, she turned and walked away. Nathan scowled. "Where are you going?" Maya didn't answer. Lucas hesitated before following her. Nathan stood there, fists clenched, watching his brothers retreating back. He hadn't expected that. And he hated it. Lines drawn in the sand. The next morning, Lucas found Maya sitting in the library, flipping through one of Jonathan's investment books. He hesitated before sitting across from her. "I didn't know," he said quietly. Maya didn't look up. Didn't know what? That Nathan was going to do that. Maya finally met his gaze. "But you still let him?" Lucas exhaled, guilt flickering across his face. "I didn't think he'd actually push you." Maya studied him for a long moment before returning to her book. "You should stop letting him control you." Lucas frowned. "He doesn't control me." Maya raised an eyebrow. Lucas sighed, leaning back in his chair. "Okay, maybe a little." Maya turned the page. "You don't have to be like him." Lucas was quiet for a long time. And for the first time, Nathan's influence cracked. Just a little. Jonathan's warning. That evening, Jonathan called Nathan into his study. Nathan slouched against the doorframe, arms crossed. "What?" Jonathan looked up from his desk, his expression unreadable. "I heard about what happened at the lake." Nathan's jaw tightened. Did Maya tattle? Jonathan leaned back in his chair. "No." Lucas did. Nathan's eyes widened. "Lucas." Jonathan folded his hands. "Nathan, I won't tolerate this." Nathan rolled his eyes. "You can't force me to like her." Jonathan's expression darkened. "No, but I can make sure you understand that hurting her, humiliating her, will have consequences." Nathan scoffed. "Like what?" "You going to take my car?" Jonathan didn't blink. "Yes." Nathan's smirk faltered. Jonathan stood, walking around his desk until he was face to face with his son. "You don't have to love her. You don't even have to like her. But you will respect her. And if you don't, you're going to learn what it feels like to have something taken from you." Nathan swallowed hard. For the first time, he realized he had pushed too far. The first shift. The next few weeks passed with slow, silent shifts in the Walker household. Lucas started sitting with Maya at the dinner table. Nathan stopped his outright cruelty, though the tension between them remained thick. Maya, as always, stayed quiet. But Jonathan saw it. The way her shoulders weren't as tense. The way she spoke a little more in Eleanor's presence. The way Lucas hesitated before laughing at one of Nathan's cruel jokes. It wasn't much, but it was a start. And Jonathan had a feeling that, in time, Maya wouldn't just survive the Walker household. She would change it. Forever. Breaking barriers. A fractured family. Tension in the Walker household had always been a silent force, but now, it was an ever-present storm brewing beneath the surface. Nathan was growing restless. His attempts to push Maya out had failed. Worse, Lucas was beginning to slip from his influence. Every time Lucas sat next to Maya at dinner, every time he nodded along to one of Jonathan's business talks instead of rolling his eyes, Nathan felt something shift in their family dynamic. And he hated it. Maya, on the other hand, was slowly finding her place. She still tread carefully, still hesitated before speaking, but there was something new in her eyes now. A quiet determination. A silent strength that Jonathan recognized all too well. She wasn't going anywhere. And Nathan knew it. One evening after dinner, Nathan cornered Lucas in the upstairs hallway. "You're seriously getting close to her." Nathan hissed. "She's not one of us." Lucas crossed his arms. "What does that even mean, Nathan? She lives here. She's part of the family." Nathan scoffed. "She's Dad's little project, that's all. He's trying to fix some deep-seated guilt or something. And Mom, she just goes along with whatever he wants." Lucas's jaw tightened. "That's not true." "Isn't it?" Nathan leaned in, his voice lowering. "We were enough before she came along." Lucas hesitated. Nathan smirked, sensing his moment of control. "Just think about it," he murmured, before walking away. Lucas stood there, staring at the wall. Thinking. The unseen threat. While the Walker household simmered with unspoken battles, Maya was thriving in other ways. She had always loved learning, and under Jonathan's guidance, she began to see the world differently. While her classmates struggled through lessons on economics, Maya absorbed every word Jonathan spoke about business strategies, investments, and market shifts. One afternoon, she sat in Jonathan's office, her notebook open, her brow furrowed in concentration. "You're catching on quickly," Jonathan said, watching her analyze the quarterly reports of one of his smaller investments. Maya bit her lip. "It just makes sense." Jonathan chuckled. "It took me years to understand this stuff." She looked up. "I had to learn a lot of things quickly." Jonathan's smile faltered. He knew she wasn't just talking about business. Before he could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it and frowned. "Maya," he said slowly, "I need to take this call. But before I do, I need to ask you something." Maya straightened. "What is it?" Jonathan hesitated, then said, "Have you been comfortable here? I mean, truly comfortable." Maya looked down at her hands. She knew what he was really asking. "Nathan." She took a slow breath and nodded. "I'm okay." Jonathan studied her. He didn't believe her, but he also knew Maya didn't like to complain. "All right," he said softly. "But if anything changes, you tell me." Maya nodded. Jonathan picked up his phone, but even as he answered, his mind was still on her. Something needed to change. The tipping point. It was a Saturday when things finally boiled over. Maya had been sitting on the back porch, reading in the late afternoon sun, when she heard voices. Nathan and Lucas. She didn't mean to eavesdrop, but the tension in their voices made her pause. "She's ruining everything," Nathan was saying. "Dad's making her his successor, Lucas. Not us. You see the way he looks at her." Lucas shifted uncomfortably. "I don't think that's true." Nathan laughed bitterly. "Of course it is. We've been working at the company, learning from him for years, and suddenly she comes in, and he's teaching her everything." Lucas hesitated. "Maybe because she listens." Nathan's face darkened. "What's that supposed to mean?" Lucas sighed. "I mean, we've never really cared about the business. You always complain about Dad's lectures, but Maya actually wants to learn." Nathan scoffed. "So what? That means she deserves everything we've worked for." Lucas didn't answer. Nathan shook his head. "You know what? You're weak, just like her." Lucas clenched his jaw. "Maybe I'm just tired of fighting a battle that doesn't matter." Nathan stared at him, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. Then, without another word, he turned and stormed back inside. Maya quickly closed her book and pretended not to hear. But she had. And for the first time, she realized, Lucas wasn't her enemy. Not anymore. The betrayal. Nathan was losing control of Lucas, of his family, of everything. He needed to do something. And so, the next morning, he made a decision that would change everything. He went to their father's office. Jonathan looked up from his desk as Nathan walked in, his usual cocky demeanor absent. Instead, he looked serious. Jonathan set down his pen. "Nathan." Nathan hesitated, then took a deep breath. "Dad, I need to talk to you about Maya." Jonathan raised an eyebrow. "Go on." Nathan licked his lips. "I don't think she belongs here." Jonathan's expression didn't change. "And why is that?" Nathan crossed his arms. "She's taking over everything. She's manipulating you and Mom into thinking she's perfect, but she's not. She's just another kid who got lucky." Jonathan leaned back, his gaze steady. "Nathan, I expected better from you." Nathan frowned. "Excuse me." Jonathan sighed. "You think I don't see what you've been doing? The way you treat her, the games you play. I've let it go for too long, hoping you'd come around. But this is a step too far." Nathan's mouth went dry. Jonathan stood, walking around his desk until he was inches away from his son. His voice was low but firm. "Maya is part of this family. She has earned her place here. And whether you like it or not, that's not going to change." Nathan swallowed. "So what? You're choosing her over me." Jonathan's eyes darkened. "I'm choosing what's right." Nathan stepped back, shaking his head. You'll regret this. Jonathan exhaled. I don't think I will. Nathan turned and left, slamming the door behind him. For the first time in his life, he felt like he had truly lost, and he didn't know how to handle it. A turning point. That night, Maya found Lucas in the kitchen, staring at his untouched plate of food. She hesitated before sitting across from him. I heard you, she said softly. Lucas looked up. What? Yesterday, on the porch. Maya met his gaze. You defended me. Lucas sighed, running a hand through his hair. Yeah, I guess I did. Maya tilted her head. Why? Lucas hesitated. Then finally he admitted, because I was wrong about you. Maya blinked. Lucas exhaled. I don't know why Nathan hates you so much, but I don't. Not anymore. Maya studied him for a long moment before nodding. Thank you. Lucas gave a small smile. Don't thank me yet. Nathan's not going to stop. Maya's lips pressed together. I know. Lucas leaned forward. Are you ready for that? Maya met his gaze, her dark eyes filled with quiet fire. I've been ready my whole life. Lucas nodded. And for the first time, Maya had an ally. One that Nathan would never see coming. The breaking point. The storm before the fall. Nathan didn't sleep that night. His father's words replayed in his mind, over and over, like a song stuck on repeat. Maya is part of this family. She has earned her place here. And whether you like it or not, that's not going to change. Jonathan had never spoken to him like that before. Never looked at him with such disappointment. Nathan had always been the golden child, the one who was supposed to take over the family business. But now his father was treating Maya like she was his real child. And Lucas had betrayed him. Nathan sat up in bed, his fists clenching the sheets. He couldn't let this happen. Not without a fight. The proposal. The next morning, Maya woke to the sound of rain tapping against her window. The house was quiet, too quiet. She dressed quickly and made her way downstairs. Eleanor was in the kitchen, humming softly as she brewed coffee. Good morning, sweetheart, she said with a warm smile. Maya smiled back. Morning. Jonathan was already in his study, looking through files. Lucas sat at the dining table, scrolling through his phone, a thoughtful expression on his face. Nathan was nowhere to be seen. Maya hesitated. Something felt off. She sat down at the table across from Lucas, who barely acknowledged her at first. But then, after a moment, he set his phone down and looked at her. I need to talk to you, he said quietly. Maya tensed. About what? Lucas exhaled. Nathan's up to something. Maya's stomach twisted. What do you mean? Lucas rubbed the back of his neck, looking uncomfortable. He's not going to let this go. I don't know what he's planning, but it's bad, and I don't want to be a part of it. Maya studied him carefully. Lucas had been Nathan's shadow for years, always following his lead. The fact that he was distancing himself now meant that whatever Nathan was planning, it was serious. I need to warn Dad, she said. Lucas nodded. Yeah, do it soon. Before Maya could respond, the front door swung open. Nathan walked in, soaking wet from the rain, his eyes gleaming with something dangerous. Jonathan stepped out of his study at the same time, frowning. Nathan, he said, where were you? Nathan smirked, shaking the rain from his jacket. Just out. Thinking. Jonathan's eyes narrowed. Thinking about what? Nathan turned his gaze toward Maya. Her stomach dropped. About the future, Nathan said smoothly. About what happens when the wrong person is in the wrong place. Silence filled the room. Jonathan's posture stiffened. Nathan, if you're... Nathan held up a hand. Relax, Dad. I just came to talk. His smirk widened. Maya, can I have a word? Jonathan took a step forward. If you have something to say it here. Nathan chuckled. Fine. I will. He turned to Maya, his voice lowering. I have an offer for you, he said. Maya didn't blink. I'm not interested. Nathan raised an eyebrow. Oh, but you should be. See, you think you belong here, but deep down, we both know you don't. Jonathan clenched his jaw. Nathan. Nathan ignored him, stepping closer to Maya. You're an orphan, he said bluntly. You weren't born into this family. You weren't raised with us. You're just a lucky kid who ended up in the right place at the right time. Eleanor gasped. Nathan, stop this right now. But Nathan kept going. I get it. You think this is your home, but it's not. And no matter how much Dad tries to pretend, no matter how much Mom coddles you, it won't ever be. Maya's chest tightened. She had spent years fighting these thoughts, fighting the fear that one day they would tell her exactly this, that it had all been temporary, that she didn't truly belong. But Jonathan, he stepped forward, his expression thunderous. That's enough. Nathan smirked, unbothered. Or what? Jonathan took another step forward, his voice cold. Or you'll regret it. Nathan exhaled dramatically, then turned back to Maya. Here's my offer, he said. You leave. Walk away now, while you still can. Take the money Dad set aside for you. Go to some nice school. Get a fresh start. But stay here. Stay in this family. And I promise, you won't like what happens. Maya felt something snap inside of her. For so long, she had let Nathan's words wash over her, let his cruelty slide off her back. But this was different. She stood up slowly, her heart pounding. Are you threatening me? She asked, her voice steady. Nathan smirked. Not a threat. A warning. Maya stared at him, her hands trembling slightly. Then, she did something Nathan didn't expect. She laughed. Nathan's smirk faltered. What's so funny? Maya shook her head, her laughter soft, but real. You, she said, you really think I'm scared of you? Nathan's eyes darkened. Maya stepped closer. You've tried everything to push me out. You stole my things. You made fun of me. You even tried to make Lucas hate me. She glanced at Lucas, who looked away in shame. But I'm still here. She squared her shoulders. And I'm not leaving. Nathan clenched his jaw. Jonathan smiled. That's my girl. Nathan's face twisted with rage. Maya turned to Jonathan, ignoring Nathan entirely. I appreciate the offer, she said dryly, but I think I'll stay. Nathan's fists tightened. His entire body was shaking with anger. He had lost. He had lost, and he didn't know how to handle it. Fine, he snapped. Have it your way. He turned and stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him. The room was silent for a long moment. Then, Jonathan exhaled. Maya, he said gently. She turned to him, and for the first time, Jonathan saw something new in her eyes. Strength. Not just the quiet kind, the unyielding kind. I'm okay, she said, voice firm. Jonathan nodded. Because for the first time, he knew. She really was. The fall of the golden sun. A house divided. Nathan had always believed he was untouchable. For years, he had been the golden son, the one who was supposed to inherit everything. But now, he felt the ground crumbling beneath him. Jonathan had chosen Maya. Lucas had chosen Maya. Even Eleanor, who had always been the peacemaker, had stood by Maya's side. And Nathan was left in the cold. His anger simmered beneath the surface as he paced his bedroom. His mind raced, his hands clenched into fists. He had tried to push Maya out. He had tried to make her break, to make her understand that she wasn't one of them. But she didn't break. She stood her ground. Nathan let out a sharp breath and ran a hand through his hair. Fine. If they wanted to replace him with her, he'd make sure they regretted it. Lucas's crossroads. Lucas sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the floor. For the first time in his life, he felt truly lost. Nathan had always led the way. Growing up, Lucas had followed his older brother without question, trusting that Nathan always knew what was right. But now, he wasn't so sure. Maya was nothing like Nathan had said she was. She wasn't weak. She wasn't manipulating their parents. She was just trying to survive, and Lucas had spent years helping Nathan make that harder for her. A knock at his door startled him. "Come in," he said quietly. The door opened, and Maya stepped inside. Lucas swallowed hard. "Hey." Maya hesitated, then sat down across from him. "You okay?" Lucas let out a hollow laugh. "Shouldn't I be asking you that?" Maya tilted her head. "I think we both know Nathan's been harder on you than he has on me." Lucas flinched. She wasn't wrong. Nathan had spent years molding Lucas into a copy of himself, making sure his younger brother never strayed too far from his shadow. And now that Lucas had started thinking for himself, Nathan saw it as betrayal. Maya shifted slightly. "You don't have to follow him anymore." Lucas let out a shaky breath. "I don't know who I am without him." Maya studied him for a long moment. "Maybe it's time to find out." Lucas looked at her, and for the first time, he truly saw her, not as an intruder, not as someone taking his place, but as family. And maybe, just maybe, she was right. Nathan's plan. Nathan wasn't going to sit back and watch his world fall apart. He needed leverage, and he knew exactly where to get it. The next morning, he walked into Jonathan's office unannounced. Jonathan looked up, irritation flickering across his face. Knocking would be nice. Nathan ignored him. He dropped a thick file onto the desk. "You need to see this." Jonathan raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" Nathan smirked. "Maya's past." Jonathan's stomach twisted. "What are you talking about?" Nathan leaned in. "You think you know her, but you don't. She's been lying to you, Dad. She's not just some innocent orphan. She has secrets, the kind that could ruin everything." Jonathan stared at him. Then, slowly, he opened the file. And what he saw made his blood run cold. Maya's secret. Maya had always known the past would catch up to her. She just didn't think it would happen like this. Jonathan stood in the living room, the file in his hands, his expression unreadable. Eleanor sat beside him, her face pale. Lucas stood nearby, looking torn between confusion and anger. And Nathan stood smugly in the corner, arms crossed, watching Maya like a predator watching prey. Jonathan finally spoke. "Maya." She swallowed. "Yes." He set the file down. "Why didn't you tell us?" Maya hesitated, her hands shaking. Nathan smirked. "Yeah, Maya. Why don't you tell everyone what you really are?" Jonathan shot him a warning look. "Enough, Nathan." Nathan shrugged. "Just saying. Maybe she's not as innocent as she looks." Maya took a deep breath. She looked at Jonathan, at Eleanor, at Lucas. And then she told the truth. "I ran away," she whispered. Eleanor's eyes widened. "Ran away from where?" Maya clenched her fists. "From a foster home. But not just any foster home. It was bad. The kind where kids disappear, where nobody asks questions." Jonathan's jaw tightened. "Maya." She shook her head. "I was supposed to stay. The system said I had to. But I couldn't. Not after what I saw. So I left. And I never looked back." Silence. Then, Eleanor let out a soft breath. "Oh, sweetheart." Nathan scoffed. "So what? We're just supposed to believe you. That you were some kind of victim." Jonathan turned to him, his voice sharp. "That's exactly what she was." Nathan's smirk faded. "You're defending her, even now." Jonathan stepped closer. "You think finding this file makes you look smart, makes you look powerful." Nathan's hands clenched into fists. Jonathan's voice hardened. "It makes you look cruel." Nathan's face twisted with rage. "She's not family," he shouted. And Jonathan laughed. A cold, humorless laugh. "Nathan," he said, shaking his head, You haven't been acting like family for a long time. Nathan froze. Jonathan's eyes burned with disappointment. You need to decide who you want to be, because right now, you're just a boy throwing a tantrum. Nathan's chest rose and fell rapidly. His vision blurred with rage. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out. The front door slammed behind him. For the first time, Nathan Walker was truly alone. A new beginning. The house was quiet after Nathan left. Maya sat on the couch, her hands trembling. Eleanor pulled her into a hug. You don't have to be afraid anymore. Jonathan knelt beside her. We love you, Maya. Nothing changes that. Lucas shifted awkwardly. Then finally, he muttered, I'm sorry. Maya looked up at him. Lucas swallowed. For everything. Maya studied him for a moment, then nodded. Okay. Jonathan smiled. Maya, no matter what happens, you are part of this family. Maya's eyes filled with tears. For years, she had been waiting for someone to say those words. And now she finally believed them. The legacy of love. The silence after the storm. Nathan was gone. For the first time in years, the Walker household was without his presence. His room remained untouched, his clothes still hanging in the closet, his cologne lingering faintly in the air. But he was gone, and the house was quieter because of it. Eleanor tried to carry on as if nothing had changed. She kept herself busy in the garden, rearranging the furniture, pretending she wasn't heartbroken over her son's choices. Lucas, though still grappling with his guilt, found solace in small ways. He spent more time with Maya, joining her in the library, walking with her to school, slowly undoing the years of silence he had helped create. Jonathan, however, remained the most affected. He had never imagined his own son would walk away from the family he had worked so hard to build. It was a wound that cut deeper than he let on, one that only Eleanor could see in the quiet moments when he thought no one was watching. But despite everything, life moved forward. And Maya was thriving. The new normal. It was strange, at first, to have peace. For years, Maya had existed on the fringes, trying to avoid conflict, trying to be invisible. But now, she was part of the family. Truly. Eleanor took her shopping for school supplies without hesitation, introducing her to their favorite cafe, making sure she knew she was included in every plan. Lucas, though still adjusting, became more of a brother than she had ever imagined. He started helping her with homework, sneaking snacks into her room late at night when they were both avoiding their responsibilities. And Jonathan did what he had always done. He taught her, guided her, invested in her future. Only now, he didn't do it because she was someone in need. He did it because she was his daughter. One evening, as she sat across from Jonathan in his office, flipping through a thick binder of financial reports, she felt something shift between them. Maya, he said suddenly. She looked up. Yeah. Jonathan hesitated, then set down his pen. I need to talk to you about the business. Maya blinked. Okay. Jonathan leaned forward, folding his hands together. I've been watching you. The way you analyze numbers, the way you think ahead. You have a mind for this, Maya. She swallowed. I just like learning. Jonathan chuckled. No, it's more than that. You understand things, instinctively. You have the same drive I had when I was your age. Maya felt heat rise to her cheeks. I don't know about that. Jonathan smiled. I do. And that's why I want you to start working with me. Officially. Maya's breath caught. What? Jonathan leaned back, watching her reaction carefully. I want you to start training for real. Not just studying, working, learning the ins and outs of the business from the inside. If you're interested, of course. Maya hesitated, her mind spinning. She had never imagined something like this. Never imagined that one day she wouldn't just belong to the family. She would be part of its legacy. She licked her lips. I'd love to. Jonathan grinned. Good. We start Monday. Maya felt a warmth in her chest, something deep and real. For the first time, she wasn't just surviving. She was building something. And this time, she wouldn't have to do it alone. Nathan's return. It was nearly 3 months before Nathan came back. He didn't announce his return. He didn't call. He just showed up. Maya was in the backyard when she heard the front door open. She turned, her breath catching as she saw Nathan standing there, looking tired, looking lost. Jonathan was the first to react. He stood, his expression unreadable. "Nathan," he said simply. Nathan swallowed. "Hey, Dad." Eleanor wiped her hands on her apron, stepping forward carefully. "You came back." Nathan nodded, shifting uncomfortably. "Yeah." Lucas appeared in the doorway, crossing his arms but saying nothing. Maya stayed still, watching. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Jonathan sighed. "Come inside." Nathan hesitated before nodding. Maya watched as he stepped over the threshold, re-entering the house he had once tried so hard to control. But this time, things were different. Because now he was the outsider. The final decision. Dinner was tense. Nathan barely spoke. Lucas didn't look at him. Eleanor tried to fill the silence with small talk, but it was useless. Finally, Jonathan set down his fork. "Nathan," he said, "why are you here?" Nathan looked up, his eyes flickering toward Maya for the briefest moment before settling on his father. "I made a mistake," he admitted. I thought I was protecting my place in this family. But I was wrong." Eleanor exhaled shakily, her eyes wet. Jonathan nodded slowly. "And what do you want now?" Nathan hesitated. "A second chance." Silence. Maya watched Jonathan's face, trying to read him. Finally, Jonathan leaned forward. "A second chance means change, Nathan." Nathan swallowed hard. "I know." Jonathan's eyes softened. "Then earn it." Nathan looked at Maya. For a long moment, they stared at each other. Then he swallowed. "I'm sorry." Maya's breath hitched. She had waited years to hear those words. And now that they were here, she wasn't sure what to do with them. Finally, she nodded. "Okay." And that was enough. For now. The future they chose. Years later, Maya stood at the head of a long conference table, surrounded by some of the most powerful people in the city. Jonathan sat beside her. His hair streaked with silver, but his eyes bright with pride. Lucas was on her right, flipping through a financial report, nodding along as she spoke. And Nathan. Nathan was there too. Older, wiser, no longer the arrogant boy who had once tried to push her out. He had spent years earning his second chance. And Maya had let him. Because that's what family does. As she finished her presentation, Jonathan stood, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Well done," he said. "You're ready." Maya looked around the room, at the business she was now set to inherit, at the family she had fought so hard to keep. She smiled. "Yeah," she said softly. "I think I am."